the old house in Savannah? When Jack Williams moved into his first house in Savannah, Georgia, he thought he was stepping into a fresh chapter of his life, a place to call his own after years of apartment living. The house, an old two-story colonial, wasn't much to look at first glance. The dark wooden floors creaked with every step, the air inside felt thick with silence, and the walls, though sturdy, seemed to hold on to a secret they didn't want to share. But for Jack, this was exactly what he had hoped for. A fixer-upper with a decent yard, a place to pour his energy into and make it his own. The previous owner, a retired history professor named Henry Martin, had lived here for decades before moving south to be closer to his children. The house had been part of Henry's life for so long, and when Jack took ownership, it felt like stepping into someone else's world, one that had been frozen in time, with remnants of the past lingering like ghosts. Jack had heard only good things about Henry from the neighbors, but there was something about the house that unsettled him from the start. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find peace in. It felt watched, as if it was keeping its own secrets, and it had been waiting for someone like Jack to uncover them. As Jack began to settle in, he quickly realized how much work the house needed. It wasn't just about repainting walls or replacing old fixtures. There was a deeper sense of restoration he was after, one that would make the house feel alive again, like it had purpose. But as he spent more time here, the weight of the house's history began to press down on him. The dark wood that ran through the floors and the creaky stairs that groaned under his weight felt like they were holding on to something. He couldn't help but feel like he was living in a space that wasn't entirely his own, like the house was watching him, waiting. It wasn't long before Jack noticed the first signs that this house was different from others he had lived in. It wasn't just the creaks of the floorboards or the strange drafts that seemed to move through rooms without explanation. It was the feeling that something was always just out of sight, lurking in the shadows. Some nights he would wake in the middle of the night, feeling as though he wasn't alone in the room, despite being in complete darkness. He brushed it off, telling himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him. But as time passed, those feelings grew stronger, more real. He felt like the house was watching him, studying him. One Saturday morning, Jack decided to host a yard sale, hoping it would be a way to meet the neighbors and clear out the clutter he had accumulated. He set up tables along the driveway, stacked with old furniture, dishes, and random items. The weather was perfect, bright and sunny, the kind of day where the world feels still and everything seems to shine just a little bit brighter. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where you could hear birds chirping from a distance, and the air smelled of fresh grass and summer. It seemed like a perfect day, but it didn't stay that way for long. As the yard sale went on, Jack noticed an older woman walking toward him from the end of the street. She wore a faded floral dress and had gray hair pulled neatly back into a bun. There was something about her that made Jack feel uneasy, though he couldn't quite place it. She didn't look at the tables or boxes like the others had. Instead, she walked directly to him, her eyes never leaving the house behind him. It was almost as though she had been expecting something. "You live here now?" she asked, her voice raspy, almost as though it had been coated in dust for years. "Yeah," Jack replied, a strange chill crawling up his spine. "I moved in a few months ago." The woman studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on the house. "I used to babysit the children who lived here a long time ago," she said, her tone soft but distant. "You should really check under the floorboards in the master bedroom. Not everything was found." Before Jack could even respond, the woman turned on her heels and began walking away, leaving Jack standing there, utterly confused and deeply unsettled. Her words echoed in his mind. Not everything was found. It felt like a warning, though he couldn't figure out what she meant. What was hidden under the floorboards? Why had she said that to him? The moment she disappeared down the street, Jack knew something wasn't right. He couldn't shake the feeling that this woman knew something about the house, something dark that had been left behind. The rest of the yard sale passed quietly, but Jack couldn't stop thinking about the strange woman's warning. He was haunted by the thought that there was more to this house than he had ever imagined. What did Margaret, he would later find out her name was Margaret, know about the place? Was she some kind of ghost? Or was there something real, something tangible hidden in the very foundation of the house. He couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there was something sinister waiting to be uncovered. If you're intrigued by this eerie tale, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue bringing you spine-chilling tales that will keep you up at night. Quick question for you. What do you think Margaret's warning meant? Was she just a crazy old woman, or is there something much darker beneath the surface? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The mysterious woman. Days passed since the strange encounter with Margaret, and Jack couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that clung to him like a shadow. He tried to convince himself that it was just an odd moment, an eccentric woman with a cryptic message. Yet something in the back of his mind told him that there was more to her words than met the eye. Not everything was found. It echoed in his head, a constant reminder that there was something hidden within the walls of his new home. The air in the house seemed heavier now, the silence more oppressive. It was as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The days following Margaret's visit felt strange. Jack had tried to carry on with his life, painting walls, fixing fixtures, but every corner of the house felt different. The creaky floorboards in the master bedroom, the dim hallway that led to the stairs, all of it seemed alive with secrets. There were moments when Jack would catch himself listening intently, as if expecting to hear something, a whisper, a creak, something out of place. He didn't know what he was listening for, but the house seemed to be waiting for him to discover its hidden truth. The warning Margaret had left him haunted his thoughts every night. What could possibly be hidden under the floorboards of the master bedroom? Was it a relic from the past, a forgotten item buried by the previous owner, or something more sinister? Jack's curiosity, mixed with a lingering unease, eventually pushed him to a breaking point. He knew he had to find out, no matter how unsettling it might be. One evening, after dinner, Jack found himself once again standing in the master bedroom, staring at the floorboards that seemed so ordinary yet felt so ominous. He bent down, running his fingers over the surface of the wood, tracing the faint lines where the boards met. There was nothing visibly wrong, nothing that screamed danger, but the memory of Margaret's eyes, those eyes that seemed to see more than they should, was enough to push him forward. He knew that he couldn't ignore her warning any longer. With a deep breath, Jack began to tap lightly on the floor, moving from one board to the next. The sound of each tap resonated through the room, the silence amplifying his every movement. It was then that he heard it, the hollow sound under the floorboards. His heart skipped a beat. This was it, the feeling that had been gnawing at him, the one that told him something was hidden beneath the surface, was now confirmed. There was something here, something that had been waiting for him to uncover it. He hesitated, staring at the spot where the floorboard sounded different. The room felt colder, suddenly, as though the temperature had dropped by several degrees. Jack's fingers trembled as he knelt down, the sense of dread growing with each passing second. Slowly he worked his hand into the small gap between the boards, prying it open inch by inch. His breath caught in his throat as the board lifted slightly, revealing a small dark space underneath. What he pulled out next made his heart race. Wrapped in tattered cloth was a bundle, small, heavy, and old. The cloth was worn and brittle, as if it had been hidden for decades. Jack's pulse quickened as he carefully unfolded the fabric, revealing what appeared to be small bones. Animal bones, but they were different from any bones he had ever seen. The way they were arranged, the way they were hidden, told Jack that these weren't just random remains. Someone had placed them here deliberately, someone who had known the house and its secrets intimately. Jack recoiled, his mind racing. Who would hide bones beneath the floorboards? Why? The question reverberated in his mind, but there were no answers. The room around him seemed to grow colder still, the silence louder, more suffocating. He quickly set the bundle down, his hands trembling as he pulled his phone from his pocket. The police needed to know about this. There was no way this could be explained away as a mere oddity. This was something darker, something that felt wrong in every possible way. The call to 911 was brief, his voice shaky as he explained what he had found. Within the hour, 2 officers arrived at the house, taking the bundle into evidence and carefully inspecting the area beneath the floor. They photographed the bones, their movements professional but tinged with curiosity. Jack tried to remain calm, answering their questions as best as he could. He was asked about the previous owner, Henry Martin, but he had no answers. He hadn't met Henry personally, only spoken to him briefly over the phone before moving in. The officers assured Jack that they would test the bones and follow up with any findings. After they left, Jack sat in the silence of the house, waiting for anything that might explain what he had just discovered. The police told him that the bones weren't human, confirming that they likely belonged to a small animal, maybe a dog or a cat, and that they were old, over 30 years old. But that didn't make sense to Jack. Why would someone hide animal bones under the floor? What did it mean? Why had Margaret, the woman who had warned him, known about this? He called Henry Martin later that evening, hoping for some explanation, but the conversation left him feeling even more unsettled. Henry sounded confused, his voice shaky when Jack mentioned the bones, and he quickly ended the call. That only deepened Jack's sense of dread. The house was more than just a home now. It had become a mystery, an enigma that seemed to grow darker with each passing day. Margaret's cryptic warning echoed in his mind. Not everything was found. If the bones weren't what she meant, then what else was hidden here? Beneath the layers of dust and time, Jack's thoughts became a whirlwind of uncertainty. He had hoped for a new beginning, a fresh start, but instead he had stumbled into a place where the past refused to stay buried, a house that seemed determined to hold on to its secrets. And Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, the discovery under the floorboards. The days following the discovery of the animal bones under the floorboards were marked by a heavy silence. Felt cold, impossibly cold, as if it had absorbed the chill of the earth beneath it. He pulled the box out slowly, as though afraid that if he moved too quickly it might disappear. His pulse hammered in his chest as he sat back on his heels, staring at the box in his hands. What could it be? Why had it been hidden here for so long? The carvings on the box seemed familiar, but Jack The days after Jack discovered the key beneath the floorboards passed in a blur. His mind, now consumed with questions, couldn't rest. The house felt more oppressive than ever, its silence thick with secrets, and each creak of the floorboard seemed to carry whispers of things that were best left undiscovered. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was waiting for him, buried in this house, was far darker than anything he had imagined. The key had stirred something inside him, something that made him question not only the house but everything he had believed about the world around him. He tried to ignore it, tried to focus on other things, but it was impossible. The house had become a labyrinth of unanswered questions, and Jack had become its unwilling explorer. The key, with its intricate carvings and unsettling aura, lay heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder that there was more to the house than its creaky floors and dusty corners. He kept it hidden, locked away in a drawer, unwilling to admit that he was afraid. Fear gnawed at him, fear of what he might find, but also of what might find him if he kept pushing further into the darkness. One evening, as the shadows grew long and the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack could no longer resist. The thought of what the key might unlock consumed him. He had been waiting for something, an answer, a sign, a moment when the house would reveal its truth. But nothing had come. The silence remained. It was as though the house was watching him, waiting for him to make the first move. He stood in front of the door in the basement, the door he had never dared to open. It was old, weathered, with peeling paint and rusted hinges. Jack had passed it countless times, each time feeling a strange pull, a sense of foreboding that kept him from reaching for the knob. But now, as he held the key in his hand, the decision seemed inevitable. The time had come. With a deep breath, Jack inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click, a sound that echoed through the house like a whisper of something ancient. He hesitated for a moment, his hand still on the door. The darkness beyond seemed to beckon him, promising answers but also warning of things that were better left untouched. But he could feel it now. He was too far in to back out. The house had already claimed him. He pushed the door open. The basement was colder than he expected, the air thick with the smell of dampness and something more unsettling. The floor was covered in dust, the shelves lined with old boxes, discarded furniture, and remnants of a life that no longer existed. But it wasn't the clutter that caught his eye. It was the far corner of the room, where something seemed to be hidden in the shadows. A shape, large and indistinct, loomed just beyond the dim light. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped forward, the floor creaking beneath his weight. The closer he got, the more he felt it. The presence, the sense of being watched, as if the house itself was alive and waiting for him to uncover its final secret. When he reached the corner, he saw it. A large wooden chest, similar to the box he had uncovered earlier, but far older. The wood was darkened with age, the edges worn and chipped as though it had been buried in the shadows for centuries. It was locked, its brass fittings tarnished by time. A chill ran through Jack as he realized what this was. The other half of the puzzle. The house had been waiting for him to find it, waiting for him to unlock the truth. He knelt down, feeling the coldness of the chest beneath his fingers. His breath quickened as he looked at the lock, a lock that seemed to recognize the key in his hand. Without hesitation, Jack slid the key into the lock. It turned, the sound almost deafening in the silence of the basement. He slowly opened the chest, the hinges groaning in protest. And for a moment, nothing happened. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with anticipation. Then, as the lid opened fully, Jack saw what lay inside. It was a collection of objects, old and worn, each one more disturbing than the last. A series of photographs, yellowed with age, depicting the house at various stages of its history. Some familiar, some not. The people in the photographs were all long gone, their faces faded with time. But there was one in particular that stood out. A woman, her eyes cold and distant, standing in front of the house, her gaze fixed on the camera. Margaret. The photographs were accompanied by a journal, its pages brittle and stained with age. Jack carefully opened it, his fingers trembling as he began to read. The entries were fragmented, written in a hurried, scrawling hand, but one thing was clear. Margaret had known something about the house, something that had been buried for decades. She had seen things that had driven her to warn Jack, to send him on this path. As he read, Jack's heart began to race. The journal spoke of rituals, of things hidden beneath the house, things that were never meant to be unearthed. It told of a darkness that had taken root in the very foundation of the house, a presence that had grown stronger over the years, feeding off the fear and secrets that were kept hidden within its walls. Margaret's warnings had been a desperate plea for someone to stop it, to keep the house's darkness contained. Jack's mind spun as he pieced the journal together. The bones, the key, the photographs, all of it was part of a much larger story, a story that had been waiting for him. Margaret had been the last to try and keep the house's secrets from escaping, but now it was Jack's turn. The house had chosen him, whether he wanted it or not. With the journal clutched in his hands, Jack stood up, the weight of what he had uncovered pressing down on him. The air in the basement seemed to grow colder, the shadows deeper, as if the house was alive, breathing, waiting for him to make his next move. He had uncovered the truth, but it came with a price. The house wasn't just a place, it was a living entity, and Jack had become part of its story. What would happen next? Would he be able to stop what had been set in motion? Or would he become another chapter in the house's dark history? Jack didn't know, but he knew one thing for certain. The house wasn't finished with him yet. The final revelation. Jack couldn't escape the overwhelming sensation that the house had already claimed him. It wasn't just a home anymore, it was a prison, one built from layers of dark history, buried secrets, and a presence that seemed to watch his every move. The discovery of the journal, the key, the photographs, it all led to this inescapable truth. There was something alive in the house, something far older and darker than he had ever imagined. As he sat in the dimly lit basement, the journal opened before him. The weight of its words settled heavily on his shoulders. It wasn't just a house with a history. It was a place that fed on fear, on secrets kept, and Jack was now entwined in its very fabric. The entries in Margaret's journal made everything clearer and more terrifying than before. She had known. She had known the true nature of the house, the rituals, the darkness buried beneath its foundation, and she had tried desperately to stop it from spreading further, but she had failed. The house had claimed her too. Now it was Jack's turn to confront it. He stood in the basement, his hands trembling, the journal clutched tightly to his chest. The key he had found, the one that had unlocked the chest, seemed to hum in his pocket. As though it were alive with a purpose waiting for him to use it again. There was no going back now. He had unlocked a door that was never meant to be opened, and the house was waiting for him to take the next step. But Jack didn't know if he was ready. How could anyone be ready for what he was about to face? The darkness in the basement seemed to deepen, drawing closer with each passing second. The walls, once solid and unyielding, now felt like they were closing in on him. Every creak of the floorboards above, every gust of wind outside, every whisper of the house's past seemed to echo in his mind. He could feel the presence, the force that had been lurking just beneath the surface. Now growing stronger, more insistent. It wasn't just the house that was alive. It was the malevolent force within it, the one that had been waiting for someone like Jack to uncover its truth. As Jack slowly made his way upstairs, the house seemed to shift around him, as though it were alive, breathing with him. The air felt thick, oppressive. The walls seemed to pulse with the weight of years of secrets, of lives lived and lost within its confines. He passed through the narrow hallways, his footsteps heavy, each one feeling like an echo in the emptiness. The master bedroom, the one where everything had begun, now felt different, darker, older. He had uncovered so much, but it wasn't enough. The house had shown him glimpses of its true nature, but the rest of the story remained just out of reach, hidden behind layers of time and fear. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, his hand still holding the journal. He had read every word, but it was the last few lines that stuck with him. The last few words written by Margaret, the final entry before she disappeared. She had written about a ritual, a way to seal the darkness away, to trap it once and for all. But the ritual required a sacrifice, a blood price that could not be avoided. Margaret had been willing to make that sacrifice, but she had failed. Now it was Jack's turn. Whether he wanted to or not, he was bound to this house, bound to its darkness. The wind outside howled as if in response to his thoughts, rattling the windows, but Jack could hear nothing now except the steady beating of his own heart. The house had chosen him. It had drawn him in with its secrets, with its promises of answers. But now, standing in the center of the room, he knew that the answers were not what he had expected. The house wasn't interested in the past. It wasn't interested in stories or history. It was interested in control, in feeding off the fear and pain of those trapped within it. He had to make a choice. He could leave, walk away from the house and its terrible grip, but he knew it wouldn't be that easy. The house had already marked him. It wouldn't let him go so easily. He had uncovered its secrets, and now they were a part of him, intertwined with his very being. He could try to ignore it, pretend like he had never found the key, never read the journal, but that would be a lie. The house would always be there in the back of his mind, pulling him back. Jack stood, the journal still clutched in his hand. He knew what had to be done. The house's darkness was growing stronger with each passing moment, feeding off his fear, his uncertainty. The ritual was the only way to stop it, to seal the house's grip once and for all, but the cost would be high. Margaret had failed because she hadn't been strong enough to make the ultimate sacrifice. Jack knew now that he had to be stronger. He had to finish what she had started. With trembling hands, Jack began to prepare. He followed the steps laid out in the journal, his mind racing with fear and determination. The house was alive and it was waiting. It was waiting for him to make his choice, and Jack had made it. The ritual would take everything from him, but it would also free him. Free him from the house's grasp, free him from the darkness that had haunted him from the moment he set foot inside. As Jack stood in the center of the room, the air around him grew heavier, the shadows in the corners of the room seeming to stretch and twist. The house was awake, aware of his actions. But Jack didn't look back. He couldn't. The price had been set. The house would never let him go, but if he completed the ritual, it would be locked away, trapped within the very foundation of the house, where it could no longer reach him. With one final steady breath, Jack closed his eyes and began the ritual. The darkness reached out to him as if it could feel his fear, but he held firm. This was his moment, his choice. The house had claimed him, but he would not let it claim everything, not without a fight. Jack's journey through the eerie house in Savannah is one of profound transformation and self-discovery, wrapped in the chilling threads of mystery and terror. When he first moved into the house, it was nothing more than a fresh start, an opportunity to create a home after years of living in rentals. But as the days passed, the house began to reveal its darker secrets hidden beneath its creaky floors and behind its weathered walls. What began as a simple curiosity about an old house soon turned into a fight for survival against an ancient, malevolent force that had been waiting for someone like Jack to uncover its dark truth. From the unsettling warning of Margaret, the strange woman, to the discovery of hidden bones and the chilling journal, Jack became increasingly entwined in the house's dark history. With each revelation, he found himself drawn deeper into a web of mystery that seemed to have no end. The key he found unlocked not just a chest, but a series of terrifying truths about the house, its past occupants, and the darkness that lurked beneath it all. Despite his fear, Jack pressed on, uncovering more pieces of a puzzle that led him to the realization that the house had claimed him, and there was no way out, except through a ritual that demanded a sacrifice. Jack's story isn't just about confronting a haunted house. It's about facing the deeper, more sinister forces that can control our lives if we allow them. The house represents the fears, secrets, and traumas we often bury deep within ourselves. Just as the house had been waiting for Jack to uncover its secrets, these hidden fears wait for us to face them. Ignoring them only gives them more power. Jack's eventual decision to perform the ritual to confront the darkness head-on is symbolic of how we must deal with our own internal struggles, acknowledging them, no matter how painful, and doing the necessary work to free ourselves. The lesson from Jack's journey is clear. To break free from the chains that bind us, we must confront our darkest fears and deepest regrets. Just as the house had a hold on Jack, our unresolved issues can control us unless we face them and deal with them. It's only through confrontation that we can find freedom. So what do you think of Jack's journey and the decisions he had to make? Do you believe that facing our fears, no matter how dark, is the only way to truly free ourselves? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us so we can continue bringing you more captivating and thought-provoking stories. Your support means everything.